Tess is standing in her kitchen at 11:30 at night, still wearing the apron she'd put on to ice the cupcakes, holding her husband's phone. The shower ended 3 hours ago. 40 women, floral centerpieces she'd hot glued herself, a diaper cake that took her an entire Sunday. She'd cried giving the toast, called Priya her person, said some things you can't unsay. She hadn't meant to look at Grant's phone. She'd picked it up thinking it was hers. One message, that's all it took. Can't believe you were there today, watching you watch me open her gifts. Her. Tess reads it again and again. The word her sits in the sentence like a splinter. Priya has been her best friend since they were 19 years old, sharing a dorm room with a broken radiator and a communal bathroom 3 floors down. They'd held each other through the bad ones, the breakup that lasted 6 months of crying, the job that crushed Priya's confidence before she found her footing, the diagnosis that turned Tess's family upside down for 2 years. They had a language, they had a shorthand, they had a friendship that other people looked at and said, I want that. Tess was the one who introduced Grant to Priya. She'd wanted her best friend to love the man she was going to marry. She'd wanted the 2 most important people in her world to be in the same room and feel what she felt, that everything was finally falling into place. That introduction happened at an engagement party, their engagement party. Tess sets the phone down on the counter. She doesn't throw it, she doesn't scream. She just sets it down, very carefully, the way you put something breakable on a shelf when you're not entirely sure the shelf is sturdy. She thinks about the last 14 months. Priya had been at every wedding planning meeting. She'd had opinions about the venue, the flowers, the seating chart, strong opinions, the kind that felt like love at the time. She'd been in the dressing room when Tess put on the dress. She'd fixed her veil. She'd held her hand walking to the doors. And somewhere in those 14 months, she had been with Grant. The timeline starts building itself in Tess's mind before she invites it to. She's not looking for it. It just comes, the way things do when the answer was always there, and your brain was simply protecting you from it until it couldn't anymore. There was a night, maybe 8 months ago, when Grant had said he was working late. Priya had been unreachable that same evening. Tess remembers texting her 3 times and getting a single response, almost 2 hours later. Sorry, was exhausted, went to bed early. She'd thought nothing of it. Priya had been dealing with a lot. She was always dealing with something. That's the thing about loving someone. You build their excuses for them before they even need them. Grant had come home that night smelling like he'd showered somewhere that wasn't their bathroom. She'd noticed. She'd filed it under Jim and moved on. She's not moving on anymore. Here is what Tess knows right now, standing in this kitchen, in this apron, next to a counter full of leftover baby shower cupcakes she made by hand. Priya is pregnant. Priya's husband Colt has been over the moon, posting about the baby every week, the kind of man who counts down the months in his Instagram captions. And Grant had been at that shower today, sitting in the corner with the other husbands, quiet, watching you watch me open her gifts. Tess presses her hands flat against the counter. She needs to know when it started. She already knows. The engagement party was a Saturday in October. 94 people, open bar, a speech from Grant's brother that made everyone laugh. Tess had been so happy that night she couldn't stop moving, circling the room, touching people's arms, refilling glasses. The kind of happy that makes you restless. She'd left Priya and Grant talking by the window for what felt like 10 minutes. It was longer than that. Tess and Priya met the way most people meet their most important person, by accident, in a moment that felt like nothing at the time. Move-in day, freshman year. Priya had arrived first and claimed the bed by the window without asking. Tess had walked in, looked at the remaining bed against the wall, looked at Priya and said, "You owe me the good side for the rest of the year." Priya had laughed, a real one, surprised out of her, and said, "Deal, I'll buy the coffee." She did. For 4 years, she bought the coffee. That's the version of Priya that Tess has been carrying for 15 years. The one who shows up, the one who remembers, the one who, when Tess's father got sick junior year, drove 4 hours to sit in a hospital waiting room, and said nothing useful and nothing hollow, just stayed. That Priya exists. Tess isn't ready to let go of her yet. But she's starting to understand that a person can be two things at once. She goes looking through the phone properly now. She's deliberate about it, not frantic, not shaking. Something in her has gone very still. The way you go still when you already know the answer and you're just collecting evidence. The messages go back 11 months. 11 months. That's 2 months before the wedding. Tess does the math standing right there at the counter. The wedding was in August. 11 months back from now puts the first message in September of last year, which means October, the engagement party, wasn't the start. It was already something by then. They were already in it when Priya stood in front of 94 people and clinked her glass and said Tess was the sister she chose. The sister she chose. Tess thinks about what she was doing in September of last year. She was finalizing the venue deposit. She was arguing with Grant's mother about the guest list. She was texting Priya photos of centerpiece options at midnight, and Priya was texting back heart emojis and opinions and, "You always have the best taste, Tess." She had such great taste. In venues, in centerpieces, in friends. If you're new here and this is the first story of ours you've landed on, subscribe. There's always more. Now back to Tess. The thing about Priya that Tess has always loved, and this is the part that's going to take the longest to untangle, is that Priya is genuinely warm. Not performed warm, actually warm. The kind you can't fake over 15 years without slipping. She remembers birthdays. She checks in after hard conversations. She brought food when Tess's mother had her knee surgery, stayed for 3 hours, cleaned the kitchen without being asked. You can't read that as nothing. Which means whatever this is, it didn't come from coldness. It didn't come from a person who never cared. It came from something else, something more complicated. And Tess isn't sure yet whether that makes it better or worse. Right now, it makes it worse. She scrolls further. The early messages are careful, measured. The kind of language people use when they're telling themselves it isn't what it is. We need to stop. I know. But then, I know. And the replies from Grant, shorter, always shorter, the way he texts when he's trying to stay in control of something. Then a shift, around November. The language changes, less careful, more certain. The kind of words that mean a decision has been made, even if neither of them has said it out loud. Tess stops on one exchange from the week of her bridal shower. Priya had thrown that one too. Booked the restaurant, designed the invitations, organized the games. Tess has a photograph from that afternoon. The two of them at the head of the table, Priya's arm around her shoulders, both of them laughing at something off camera. It's one of Tess's favorite photos from that whole year. She'd had it printed. It's on the bookshelf in the living room, 20 feet from where she's standing. The message from that week, the one she's looking at now, is from Priya to Grant. Today was hard. That's all it says. Grant's reply, I know. You were perfect. Tess reads it twice, 3 times. She's trying to figure out what today refers to, whether it's the bridal shower specifically or something else, some meeting she doesn't know about, some conversation that happened in a parking lot or a coffee shop, or somewhere Tess's name hung in the air between them. She doesn't know yet, but she knows what you were perfect means. It means Grant was watching. It means he saw Priya sit across a table from the woman he'd married or was about to marry, and pour champagne and give toasts and play the part. And his response to learning how hard that was for her wasn't guilt.
It was admiration. That's the thing Tess is going to have to sit with for a long time.
Not just what they did, but how they watched her and kept going anyway. Tess doesn't wake Grant up. She thinks about it, stands in the hallway outside their bedroom door for a full minute, hand not quite touching the handle. She can hear him breathing in there, steady, slow, the sleep of someone who is not standing in a hallway at midnight, doing arithmetic on the last 14 months of their life. She walks back to the kitchen. There's a thing that happens when you find out something like this. People expect collapse, the falling, the screaming, the before and after break where everything splits clean. But that's not what Tess is experiencing right now. What she's experiencing is closer to clarity, a cold, sharp, almost mechanical clarity. Like something that was slightly blurred for a long time has finally been brought into focus, and the image is horrible. But at least it's real. She can work with real. She goes back to the beginning of the messages, and she reads all of them, every one. It takes her just over an hour. She makes a coffee she doesn't drink. She reads. Here is what she learns. It started as something they were both pretending wasn't happening. A long conversation at the engagement party that went somewhere it shouldn't have. A text the next day that was innocent on its surface. Then another. Then a meeting that was framed as accidental. Then one that wasn't framed as anything at all, because by that point they weren't pretending anymore. By November, 3 months before Tess walked down the aisle, it was established. Not frantic, not guilty feeling in the way the texts read. Established, comfortable. The kind of comfortable that takes time to build. And Priya never pulled back. That's the part Tess keeps returning to. There were moments in those messages where she could feel the shape of a choice, a place where the thread could have been cut, where someone could have said, "This ends now," and meant it. There are even messages where Priya says something close to that. "I can't keep doing this. This has to stop." But then it doesn't stop. And Grant never pushes her to end it. He never says, "You're right, we have to stop. This is wrong." He says things like, "I know," and "whatever you need," and "I'm not going anywhere." The language of someone making themselves easy to return to. He made himself easy to return to, while Tess was addressing wedding invitations. Here's what I want to ask you, and I mean this genuinely. Did you see it before she did? Because there's always a moment in stories like this where the audience spots the shape of what's happening before the person living it can. Was there a line in segment 1 or 2 that landed differently once you knew? Tell me in the comments. I read them. Now here's where it gets worse. Priya got pregnant in the spring, April, based on what Tess can piece together from the messages. The timing of the announcement, which came in May, 6 weeks after Tess and Grant got back from their honeymoon, had felt like good news landing at the right time. New marriage, best friend expecting. Everything happening at once, the way life sometimes generously stacks its good moments. Tess had screamed when Priya told her. The good kind of scream. She'd taken her to lunch, bought her a card, started a list in her phone of shower themes within the week. She can see that list right now from where she's sitting. It's still in her notes app. Shower ideas. Priya, with a little pink flower emoji next to it. Tess sits with what she's about to let herself think. She lets herself think it. The baby's due date is September. Priya is currently 7 months along. The relationship in these messages, based on when it started, based on what she's reading, was ongoing in April. Colt and Priya have been together for 6 years. They have a life. He is, by every account Tess has ever witnessed, a devoted and present partner. He's been building a crib. She's seen the photos. Tess doesn't know. She doesn't know. But she's sitting here at midnight, doing math she never asked to do, and the numbers aren't settling in a way that lets her stop thinking. She locks Grant's phone, sets it back exactly where she found it. Angle, position, everything. Then she goes to her own phone and opens her messages with Priya. 15 years of them. The thread goes so far back the timestamps feel like archaeology. She scrolls up until her thumb gets tired, and she still hasn't reached the beginning. 15 years of, I'm on my way, and you okay? And I saved you the last one? And the specific kind of shorthand that means someone has been paying attention to you for long enough to know exactly what you need before you ask. She reads the most recent message Priya sent her. It came in at 9:17 tonight, an hour after the shower ended. Today was so beautiful. You did that for me. I love you so much. Tess puts the phone face down on the counter. She doesn't reply. She sleeps 2 hours, maybe less. Not in the bedroom, on the couch, on top of the covers, still in the apron until she realizes she's still wearing it and takes it off and folds it over the arm of the sofa, which is a strange thing to do at 2 in the morning, but her hands needed something to do. When she wakes up, the light is gray, and Grant is in the kitchen. She can hear him. The specific sounds of his morning, the cabinet, the drawer, the particular way he sets a mug down. She has loved those sounds for 4 years. She has oriented herself by them, the way you orient yourself by any landmark you've stopped noticing because it's always been there. She lies on the couch and listens to him not know that she knows. This is the part nobody tells you about. The window between finding out and saying something. It's not nothing, that window. It has a weight to it. Because the moment she walks into that kitchen, everything changes. Not just between her and Grant, but between her and the version of her life she understood herself to be living. You can't unopen that door. You can't go back to the apron and the cupcakes and the toast about her person. She has maybe 3 minutes left of before. She gets up. Grant is pouring coffee when she comes in. He turns around, sees her face, and something moves across his expression. Fast, almost imperceptible, but she's a pattern reader and she catches it. A half second of something that isn't surprise. He knew she was on the couch. He'd seen her there, and walked past her, and made coffee, and said nothing. You okay? He says. Did you sleep out here? Tess looks at him. She has known this man for 5 years. She can read his silences, his posture, the specific quality of his stillness when he's waiting to see which direction something is going. He's very still right now. I found the messages, she says. She doesn't say which messages. She doesn't have to. The mug goes down on the counter. What happens next is not what movies have trained you to expect. There's no explosion, no immediate confession with tears and falling to his knees. What Grant does is take a breath, controlled, deliberate, and say, Tess. Just her name, like it's the beginning of an explanation, like there is one. She asks him when it started. He tells her October, the engagement party. She tells him she knows it was before that. She read the messages. She has the timestamps. His jaw shifts. He recalculates. He tells her September. She waits. He says it was only a few times before the wedding, that he'd ended it, that it was over. She asks him when it ended. He doesn't answer fast enough. She asks him again. It didn't end. That's the answer he can't make himself say out loud. It didn't end when he said it did. It didn't end when he married her. It was still going in the spring, which means when they came back from their honeymoon and Priya announced her pregnancy with that enormous smile, and Tess screamed the good kind of scream, Grant was standing right there, in the room, watching that happen, and he said nothing. Tess asks him about the baby. Grant goes very quiet. She asks him again, differently, specific, the dates, the timeline. She shows him the math on her phone, the way she's laid it out in her notes, because she had 2 hours on the couch to do nothing but think, and she is not going to be outmaneuvered in her own kitchen. He says he doesn't know. She asks if Priya knows. He says he doesn't know that either. What she's looking at, what she's trying to hold the shape of, is the possibility that Colt, who has been building a crib, who counts down the months on his Instagram, who is by every account a devoted and present partner, might be preparing for something that isn't what he thinks it is. She doesn't know that. She doesn't know anything for certain except the messages and the math and the look on Grant's face right now, which is the look of a man who has been hoping the specific question she just asked would never arrive. It arrived. She tells him to go stay somewhere else. He starts to say something. She holds up one hand. Not aggressive, just clear. The kind of clear that doesn't leave room for a conversation. He goes. She stands in the kitchen alone for the second time in 8 hours. Same room, different Tess. The coffee he made is still on the counter. She pours it out, makes her own, and sits down at the table. She has one more thing she needs to decide. Whether to call Priya. She picks up her phone. She calls Priya at 7:43 in the morning. Priya picks up on the second ring, which means she was already awake, which means she and Grant have probably already spoken, which means this conversation is not going to go the way Priya is hoping it will. Tess? Her voice is careful, soft in a way that isn't sleepy. I need you to come over, Tess says. A pause. Is everything okay? Tess doesn't answer that. Come over, Priya. She arrives 40 minutes later, 7 months pregnant, wearing the gray, oversized cardigan she's had since college, the one Tess has borrowed a dozen times. Her hair is pulled back. She looks like herself. She looks exactly like Priya, the Priya Tess has known for 15 years. And that's the thing that makes this so hard to stand in front of. She didn't become someone else. She stayed herself. She just also became this. Tess lets her in without hugging her. Priya notices. Of course she notices. They sit at the kitchen table, the same table where Tess did the math last night. Tess puts Grant's phone between them, face up, the message thread open. Priya looks at it, looks at Tess. She doesn't say it's not what it looks like. She doesn't say anything. That's actually the thing that earns Tess's one small, grim measure of respect in this moment. Priya doesn't insult her with a denial. She sits with what she's done, visible on the table between them, and she says, very quietly, I'm sorry. Tess has been waiting to hear those words for 8 hours. Now that they're here, she doesn't feel relief. She feels nothing. Or not nothing. She feels the specific exhaustion of being correct about something you desperately needed to be wrong about. When did Grant call you? Tess asks. An hour ago? What did he tell you? That you found out, that he told you it ended before the wedding. Tess tilts her head. And you let him say that. Priya closes her eyes. It didn't end before the wedding, Tess says. It's not a question. No. When did it end? A pause that stretches long enough to be its own answer. We stopped talking in June. June. 1 month after the pregnancy announcement. 1 month after Tess screamed the good kind of scream in this woman's living room. I need to ask you something, Tess says, and I need you to understand that I already did the math, so I'm not asking because I don't know. I'm asking because I need to hear you say it. Priya is very still. Is there any chance Grant is the father? The kitchen is quiet. Outside, a car passes, a dog somewhere. Ordinary morning sounds doing nothing at all to make this moment feel survivable. Priya's hands are on the table. She looks at them. I don't know, she says. 2 words, 4 syllables, the kind of sentence that rearranges everything it lands near. Tess had prepared herself for yes. She'd prepared herself for no. She had not, she realizes, prepared herself for I don't know, for the specific horror of a maybe that involves a man in another house assembling a crib for a child that might not be his. Does Colt know? Tess asks. No. Are you going to tell him? Priya's hands press flat against the table. She doesn't answer. And here is where Tess hits the wall she didn't see coming. Because she can be devastated for herself, she can be furious at both of them, she can be clear-eyed about what her marriage is and isn't going to survive. But Colt is a person she likes, a person who has done nothing except love someone who is not fully available to be loved without knowing it. And he's about to become a father, or he already thinks he is. She looks at Priya across the table, at the cardigan, at the hands on the table, at the face she has known for 15 years. You have to tell him, Tess says. Not eventually, not after the baby comes. You have to tell him the truth before that child is born. Priya doesn't say yes. She doesn't say no. She says, Tess, I'm not asking, Tess says. I'm telling you. Because if you don't, I will. The silence that follows is the end of 15 years. Not loud, not dramatic, just the specific quiet of something that has been load-bearing for a long time, finally being set down. Priya leaves 20 minutes later. She doesn't take the cardigan off. She walks out the same door she came through, and Tess watches her go from the window, and when the car is out of sight, she stands there for another minute, just looking at the empty street. Then she goes to the bookshelf in the living room. She takes down the photograph from the bridal shower, the two of them at the head of the table, Priya's arm around her shoulders, both of them laughing. She holds it for a moment. Then she puts it face down on the shelf. Not thrown, not shattered, just turned over. She's not ready to throw anything away yet, but she's done looking at it. 3 weeks pass before Tess hears from Priya again. In that time, Grant comes back once to collect his things, a conversation that lasts 11 minutes and accomplishes nothing except confirming that he is, at his core, a man who is more comfortable being let off the hook than held to one. He says he's sorry. He says it more than once. He says he never wanted to hurt her, which is technically true and also completely meaningless, because the things that hurt us most are rarely done with the goal of hurting. They're done with the goal of getting what we want while someone else pays the cost. Tess signs the lease on an apartment she finds in 4 days. Efficient, decisive. She has always been the kind of person who moves fast once she knows what she's moving toward, or in this case, what she's moving away from. The call from Priya comes on a Tuesday. Short, careful. Priya tells her that she told Colt, that it was the worst conversation of her life, that he has moved out and they don't know yet what comes next, that a paternity test will happen after the birth. She says all of this like she's reporting facts, like she's reading from a document. Tess understands that. Sometimes the only way to say the unbearable thing is to flatten it until it feels like information. Okay, Tess says. I know that's not enough, Priya says. No, Tess agrees, it's not. Another pause. Then, are we? Priya starts and then stops. Tess waits to hear the end of that sentence. She genuinely doesn't know what she'll say when it arrives. But Priya doesn't finish it. The question just hangs there, incomplete, which is maybe the most honest thing she's said this entire time. Because there is no clean ending to that sentence. There is no word that fits in that blank right now. I don't know yet, Tess says. She means it. They hang up. Here's what I keep coming back to. Not the betrayal itself. As shattering as it is, betrayal has a shape you can eventually name. What I keep coming back to is the participation, the active, ongoing participation. Priya sat across from Tess at a bridal shower she threw, and she texted Grant that same night that it was hard. And Grant told her she was perfect. And the next day, Tess woke up and texted Priya a photo of the centerpieces she'd ordered, and Priya responded with heart emojis. That's not a mistake. A mistake is a moment. That's a sustained decision made over and over again, in small increments, across 14 months. And the reason it matters, the reason this is worth sitting with, is that sustained decisions leave patterns. And patterns, once you learn to look for them, are everywhere. Tess is learning to look for them, not with bitterness, or not only with bitterness, but with the specific attentiveness of someone who has realized that people show you who they are in the small moments, the unguarded ones, the ones they don't think you're paying attention to. The text that took 2 hours to come back, the shower that was hard to attend, the husband who came home smelling like somewhere else and said he'd been at the gym. She'd been paying attention. She just hadn't let herself read what she was seeing. She's going to let herself read things now. That's the thing she takes out of this. Not the wreckage, though the wreckage is real and it's going to take time, and some of what she's lost she is not getting back. But underneath the wreckage, a recalibration, a new fluency, the beginning of a relationship with her own instincts that isn't filtered through wanting things to be okay. She moves into her apartment on a Saturday in November. She puts exactly 3 things on the walls. She makes coffee in her own kitchen, in her own mug, and she sits at a table that is hers alone, and she looks out a window she chose. She doesn't feel fine, but she feels clear. That's enough for now. And the photograph from the bridal shower? The one she turned face down on the shelf? She left it there when she packed, didn't take it with her, didn't throw it away. She just left it for the next people to find. Face down, on a shelf, in a house that used to be hers, in a life she used to live. Let someone else wonder about the 2 women laughing. If there's someone in your life right now whose explanations have started to feel like a little too much effort, I want you to sit with that. Not to spiral, just to notice. Because you already know. You just needed permission to trust it. And if this story hit somewhere specific, if it reminded you of something, if it made you exhale in a way you weren't expecting, share it with one person who needs to hear it. Sometimes the most useful thing we can do for someone we love is hand them the language for what they're already living. There's another story waiting, one that's going to start somewhere you won't expect and end somewhere you absolutely will. I'll see you there.